Hey guys, and welcome to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report, the first podcast to bring you the local inshore, offshore, and onshore fishing report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. I'm Joe Baya, here again with Butch Theory. Butch, how'd your Thanksgiving go, buddy?
It was good, man. Way too much food, good family, some good camaraderie, some decent fishing. How about you, man? We had a good time.
I had a great time. I'm working on, I'm pretty sure I'm close to hibernating.
Mm-hmm.
Fat stores are almost where they need to be. So
yeah, I had to break out the stretchy pants yesterday, and it's not even Christmas yet. So
definitely sweatpants weather all day long, all the time now.
Fluffy season has arrived again.
For sure. Man, I did get a chance to get out on the river a little bit, and I'm gonna rant. Is it okay? Is it okay if I rant for a minute?
I think so.
This is not meant to call anybody out. It is a little bit, but I think most of the folks that listen probably understand this, and I think a lot of times ignorance is at the root of a lot of the things that annoy us with fishing. It's just folks that don't know. But I was able to get out and put my wife on the boat and take my 2-year-old son out and fish in Fowl River. And if you've never fished in Fowl River or any of the tidal rivers off of Mobile Bay, further you go upriver, a lot of times they get narrower as you go. And I was out for, I'd say maybe 30 minutes, and I had 3 boats wake me, some going full speed, some slowing down enough
to make the wake bigger?
To say they slowed down, but actually made the wake worse.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Not only wake me, but also drive their boats. No lie, 2 of the 3 that came by me had to drive around our popping corks. And all of them were easily within casting distance of my boat. So that was a little frustrating, you know, and that's one of those things where I've got a lot better over the years about just relaxing and letting things go. And I let it go. It's no skin off my back, really. But I will say, if you guys are out in any of the tidal rivers fishing this time of year, if you're not used to that type of fishing, it's a lot more close quarters than what you're going to get out in the bay or along the beaches and that kind of thing. Just be aware of people. Best thing you can do is slow to idle speed, hug the bank that the folks aren't on. Those rivers are not very big. It really doesn't slow you down very much to come on down to idle speed and give those people as much room as you can, because not only is it not courteous, you know, to do that to someone, but it really does shut the bite down. Mm-hmm. Those fish hang up on those points in those rivers, and you can be catching fish and one boat do that to you, and it'll be 15 or 20 minutes for it to turn back on, if it turns back on at all. So just be cognizant of that, as I guess my soapbox, and I'm stepping down. But other than that, man, I had a great time. I love being on any of our rivers this time of year just because it's so beautiful out there. Those sunsets are amazing, and it was just good to spend some time with family and get out there and get after them. You know, we talk about it a lot, but don't really get to go that much. Weekend warriors, and it was good.
Good, man. Yeah, there's been a decent amount of speckled trout and redfish in here. I struck out yesterday. I couldn't figure out what they wanted. Did a little afternoon session yesterday. I've been smoking them on the old B-Cat slick lure and the natural, the 2-inch voodoo. And I tried everything. I tried several other colors for the slick lure. I tried the little slick. I don't know. It may just not been. I didn't look at the tides or anything like that. I just went whenever I could go.
Did you try putting a little stank on it? Did you try any of those little Fishbite strips? Or
I didn't, but I did try the Berkeley Gulp. I think I even sent you a picture of the ribbed mullet or something mullet, 4-inch mullet. So that had some stank on it for sure. And I tried that for a while too, and that she wasn't having it. I don't know.
Well, you got a good question coming up today. It's one of those simple but good questions related back to jig fishing. I'm looking forward to hearing you ask that. And I'm also, like we said last week, I didn't think in December we'd be talking much about blue water fishing, but it's been awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing what Angelo has to say in the report this week, find out if it's still going off, and hear from everybody else and find out what's going on all around the Gulf Coast. Where are we going first?
Let's head on down and see what old Pier Pounder's up to. But before we get that Pier report, this week's sponsor of the show is our local Geico Insurance Office. Everybody knows Geico has great auto rates, but did you know they also have great rates on boats, ATVs, motorcycles, and personal watercrafts? Give Ron Davis a call at 251-445-0053. Not only will Ron work hard to get you the lowest premium possible, but you'll have the service you expect and can count on if you ever need to make a claim. Geico does even more than insure your valuable items. They also offer on-the-water services like towing, battery jumps, gas delivery, and you can save by bundling these services with your insurance. If you're an Alabama saltwater fisherman, support the local insurance agent who helps bring you the show each week. Call Ron Davis, Geico agent, at 251-445-0053. or visit him online at geico.com/mobile-al. How are we doing this week, Mr. David?
Real good, real good. I wish Ron Davis offered some kind of catching insurance
Yeah,
for some of the days that are slow,
Dead shrimp insurance.
Yeah, there you go. But your bait dies, or
That's right.
or a crab bites your toe, or something like that.
Well, if you take a trip, you can get trip insurance. I don't see a reason why you can't get fishing trip insurance.
Yeah, we ought to talk to him about that. Yeah,
right.
We'll see what we can do.
The problem with that is that some people who will remain nameless are uninsurable, David.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, what's been going on offshore?
What's been going on down there, bud?
Well, pretty typical for early December. It's understandably kind of slow, but there's been some bright spots. There's still pompano being caught on the beach occasionally. Redfish and drum have been real good at times. The usual suspect places, Perdido Pass and Fort Morgan Point, have been pretty good. Fairly consistent on those bigger drum and all, and the beaches have been pretty good too, and the pier also. And in fact, we're just coming off of this kind of a warm spell for late November and into early December, and the water was actually had creeped back up to 70 degrees, and they were catching some nice Spanish mackerel off the pier last weekend. Then the water temperature since has, dropped back into the mid-60s where it should be. And that's only going to help fishing, I think, get better, really, as we progress further into December. Usually the water temperature cools on down through the 60s. And that helps kind of thin the pinfish out, and the bite gets cleaner and cleaner from the pier. And that's a good thing, because a lot of people have been targeting sheepshead, but they've been mostly using fiddler crabs because the pinfish have been so thick, and it's caused like a shortage of fiddler crabs in Baldwin County. People trying to get them, and the word gets around real quick that such and such a bait shop has fiddler crabs, and people go and they buy out 5,000 fiddler crabs in a day. So it's pretty popular bait, and it's an easy way to fish, and if you don't use them all, you can keep them alive for a week or something, in a bucket, pretty much.
So, David, this time of year, you mentioned the water temperatures dropping and that helping the fishing, and I understand that from the aspect of cleaning up the bite. But this time of year, we get a lot of folks listening to the show who are from up north. They're down for the winter, and they're going fishing while they're here, and the surf and the pier is a great place to do that if you're a snowbird and don't have access to a boat or didn't bring your boat down with you. That water temperature dropping, what are the most common fish that are going to be hanging around, say, the pier, that folks could really key in on targeting?
Right. Oh, good. That's a good question, because the pelagic fish for the most part are gone when the water temperature drops below 75, 70. That's pretty much over with. So what we're left with is our resident fish species, which are all the drum. They don't migrate down to South Florida. They may move into a little bit deeper water, but they're going to be around. And then there's also sheepshead and bluefish and pompano in the mix. And, occasionally we'll see a few other things, some flounder and stuff like that. But the main course is as far as focusing or targeting specific species would be either red drum and then pompano / whiting and sheepshead. So those three options are going to be your main, course throughout the winter. And that starts really in late fall once the water temperature drops below 70.
You were talking about those sheepshead and fiddler crabs. Is the preferred method for sheepshead bumping those pylons? We talk a lot on here about scraping pylons when you've got the ability to do that. And I wouldn't imagine that's much of an option there on the pier. Where do those fish like to congregate?
They like hard structure. Sheepshead do tend to orient around hard structure. They're one of our few omnivorous fish in that their primary diet is algae that they graze off the barnacles and any kind of hard structure, pilings or whatever. but they're also opportunistic. They come across any kind of small shrimp or crab or whatever, they'll snap it up as well. And the anglers, have keyed in on that and try to take advantage of it by fishing little fiddler crabs or small shrimp around the pilings. And at times you can even, especially in clear water, you may find them schooled on the bottom, and you can catch them on ghost shrimp as well. So, you have to, things I would remind folks is that they're three-dimensional. If you don't see them hanging, suspending on the pilings, feeding actively, odds are there's some down on the bottom. They may be kind of sulking. And so things like hermit crabs and ghost shrimp, and also the other kind of things that they feed on, oysters. People have tried a lot of different things, even barnacles. You wouldn't think of putting a barnacle on your hook for bait. They sure munch on them. There's plenty of them you clean and you see chunks of barnacles in their stomach where they can really crunch those up. They've got some, besides their teeth in the front that they use for grazing, they've got these crushers in the back of their throat that they can grind those shells and things up. They eat oysters and clams and all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah, they don't even check up on the shell for sure.
They'll just munch down. They can work over a hook too.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Well, you got to talk about catching sheephead like on a fiddler crab. Do those redfish off the pier on those pilings, do they eat, the fiddler crab like you're fishing for sheephead, or are you kind of?
That's an incidental catch. No, redfish and black drum both are incidental catches to the sheep's head with fiddler crabs, and even occasionally people will catch pompano. You don't think about pompano orienting around the pilings, but they do too. They like to school in with the sheep's head, and they'll meander around in the school, and they're opportunistic too. And if they see a small shrimp or crab, they'll usually jump on it.
David, let's focus in on this sheep's head bite a little bit. We've talked about the last couple of weeks from the inshore perspective and from the kayak perspective, but we hadn't really talked about it on the pier. So you're going to be want to work the water column. They may be on the bottom. They may be on the piling. Let's talk a minute about tackling up, because anytime you're fishing around a structure like a piling, and these sheep's head, they're pretty formidable. When they put some size on, they're pretty formidable with regards to how much drag they can pull. What do you want to use in that scenario? I know you love fishing ultralight, but is this a situation where you tackle up and to be able to get them away from that structure and not get cut off? What do you like to do? What would you recommend folks do?
At times you have to tackle up. You may have wind and current to where you're fishing vertically with an ounce or even 2, in some cases maybe even 3 ounce egg sinker, to get the bait down in front of the fish and hold it there. But you have to keep in mind, the dynamics of your rod so that you don't over tackle it. One thing people do is switch over to braided line with a fluorocarbon leader, and that gives you a little less visibility for the leader. And it also gives you a little better control in that, say you could fish 20-pound braid with a 15-pound fluorocarbon leader. And, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of the same concept that people use in freshwater fly fishing, where the tippet is lighter than their main line, in that, the weight is on your main line, but you want to scale down your leader so that the fish doesn't see it as well, and he's more apt to bite. Because
right.
If you use 30-pound monofilament, he's more inclined to see that and not bite. And I've seen plenty of times where they look at a bait and then they just move away because it doesn't look right to them.
I'm sure it's a fine line there too, though, with your line poundage and your rod strength, because you got to get them out of those pilings. I mean, you don't want to get wrecked around those pilings, but you got to be able to catch them too. I would think that's a pretty fine line there.
Yeah, one trick I try to do is if I'm fishing and there's not too many other people around, is that I'll try to have a lane open to one side away from the piling. So when I hook that fish, I can move away and put pressure on him diagonally, so that he's not able to dive straight down behind the piling. Because they, like you mentioned, over 4 pounds, they're pretty formidable even on medium heavy tackle. with, 12, 15, 20-pound line even. A lot of people get broken off by them. And it's not unusual at all to catch a sheep's head that's got, a little bling in his mouth from where he's broken one or two other anglers off.
I believe that. Well, Flounder's back open, right?
Yeah, finally. I don't know how much everybody missed, but that's a good opportunity now. This time of year, I've always caught a few incidentally fishing shrimp on the bottom or near the bottom for sheep's head, and pompano also. Those are often a bycatch from that kind of fishing. And places like Perdido Pass and also at the pier, it seems like we always pick up a few incidentally. And, and they're usually, those nice big legal female flounder that are moving, the late movers that are just
still
now
hanging
getting
around
out into the Gulf. Mm-hmm. And
David,
they're usually plumped up pretty good because they'll be moving off into the Gulf to spawn this winter.
Well, David, there's been a lot of research done and a lot of research being done on those flounder at the Claude Petit Flounder Hatchery. One of the groups that supports that is CCA of Alabama. They also support projects like the cobia tagging project that we talk with Richard Rutland a lot about, and various other conservation-oriented projects and research projects to hopefully help. I think you've seen it. I know just about everybody we talk to has seen the flounder decline in the area. So I personally think it's a good thing that folks are taking the initiative to try to learn more about these fish and hopefully help the fishery, because it's sad to see that it's gotten to where it is, and I hope to see it improve. That kind of brings us into this week's inshore tip, and it is brought to us by CCA Alabama. So guys, just like those tagging projects, another great way to support conservation projects is to head over to the Alabama Department of Revenue's distinctive license plate page at revenue.alabama.gov. You can get your CCA distinctive Alabama saltwater fishing license plate over there. And, we've talked with Blakely Ellis on here several times. All that money that you put into CCA is going right back into the resources that we have right here in Alabama. So it's good to see and good to know where that money's going. But David, onshore tip, what are you thinking this week, man?
Well, staying with the theme of flounder would be to remind anglers that, that's always an option. If you're targeting sheep's head or you're targeting whiting, it's not happening. Why not give the flounder, a try? There was, in the past, we had a vibrant year-round flounder fishery where anglers would target them with bull minnows, or another old school trick would be the jig and strip, where you'd take like the underside of a stingray wings, where it's real white, but that's a real tough, meat. If they caught a small stingray, they would cut it up into strips and then freeze it in small bags and take a half a dozen of those strips fishing each time they'd go, and just take a half-ounce Spanish mackerel jig and drop it on the bottom with one of these 4-inch strips of stingray belly, pinned onto it, and just drag it and bounce it along the bottom. And you'd be surprised when they're there how readily the flounder hit those. And occasionally redfish will strike it as well. When the flounder are there, it's a good way to quickly find out if they are indeed there and hungry. Now, they've been catching them over in the Panhandle piers, and so I'm wondering if the only reason they haven't really been talked about much in Alabama is because of the November closure, which is behind us now. So that's a good option. And also the baits like the Gulf shrimp are real popular and real good inshore, and they work from the pier as well for flounder, especially the colors like New Penny and the molting is another good color. And I think it's a combination of the scent and the action really gets those flounder fired up, and they look so much like their natural prey, which is beach ghost shrimp, that they prey on the bottom, that they'll really pounce on them. They don't hesitate. They just engulf it seems like. So I always keep some of those in my box. I may bounce some Gulf shrimp on the bottom if I don't have anything to, sweeten a jig to drop to the bottom.
So, David, flounder are what I would say are one of my nemesis fish. They're a lot like wahoo in that every single time I've hooked a flounder in my entire life, equally with wahoo, I get really excited, like genuinely, truly excited. And
do you yell flounder when you hook one?
Absolutely, as loud as I can.
Like,
And
instead of wahoo, you yell
usually it
flounder.
involves something like get the net, and
right on.
Just general screaming at whoever is closest.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, that mostly stems from the lack of volume of flounder that I've put on the boat in my lifetime, I think. And so one of the questions I've been asking everybody on this podcast about flounder is how they do it and how they work their bait. So we talk with Richard Rutland in depth about how he flounder fishes, but I want to know how you do it in the surf. Specifically, what I want to know is, how do you work the bait? Obviously, we all know we got a fish on the bottom, but do you do anything different?
Yeah, usually I'll try, like any kind of artificial. You may have to experiment a little bit, but my primary retrieve is to just kind of creep or drag that jig along the bottom. Then, when you feel the need every now and then, give it a little wrist snap so that it hops up off the bottom and it comes back down. And when it hits back on the bottom, it kind of like a little puff of sand comes up, and that seems to really get their attention. So a combination of that, you'll be dragging it along the bottom, and all of a sudden it'll feel like you're hung up. And that's typically when they just slip up behind it and suck it in. But what I do is, along the shore especially, is try and target the structure that's there, which is on the beach is made out of sand. And this time of year, especially on a north wind, you'll see these little washouts close to the beach where you may have 3 feet of water right up close to the beach. And sometimes the flounder will lay right at where the waves wash back down if there's not much surf, and just lapping up against the shore and then receding. They'll sit right at the toe of that. And it would be difficult to literally just drop it down and kind of jig it along the bank. But what you can do, just like where those little beach troughs open up, is stand at the toe of it and diagonally cast down the beach, parallel to the beach instead of perpendicular to it. And that way your bait is in the zone, it's in the strike zone longer. And you can work that slope where those fish usually lie for a longer period. And you're not just kind of walking down the beach and throwing out perpendicular and working it. Not that you can't catch them like that. Quite often you do. But that's not always the case, especially if you find some fish that are bunched up in a hole. The best way to approach them is to work that drop off along the edges. And that could be the front side of the bar as well as the back side of the sandbar in these little beach troughs that may form. Usually you'll see it's like kind of teardrop shaped or kind of oval shaped. And as it moves away from the beach, it gets a little wider, and it also gets deeper. And it seems like anything over 3-4 feet is inclined to hold fish, especially flounder. They don't need as much water as, the other predators that are in the surf zone, even like whiting and certainly pompano would like, more water, probably like 4 to 6 or maybe even 8 feet or more. And whiting can get by with half that. Well, flounder can get, 2 or 3 feet. And, occasionally even you'll see there may even be speckled trout or redfish in some of those holes chasing finger mullet and stuff like that.
I like it.
Great tips.
That's a good way to approach it, I think.
Mr. David gave that tip about throwing parallel to the beach, like, walking out a little bit and throwing parallel to the left, parallel to the right, looking for those flounder on one of the first shows we ever did. And that was a really good tip. And that still sticks out to me.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that's a method that always, it always seems to work. I try to approach that, 3-dimensionally, X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And, and keeping in mind that those fish may be deep, especially if you're fishing like off the seawall at Rodeo Pass or at the pier, if the sheep's head aren't suspending on the pilings to catch, or the whiting aren't schooled up under the pier, a lot of times I'll just, I think I'll just take a jig and a grub and bounce it around these pilings and see if there's any flounder laying down there. And that's a great option for December now that the season is reopened on them.
For sure. That's a segment chock full of tips right there, folks. As always, we appreciate you, Mr. David. If anyone wants to book a trip with you to try and figure out those flounder, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
They could contact me through my Facebook page. And if they just type in pierpounder.com, it'll take them to my Facebook page. And it's got the pricing and some pictures of recent catches and stuff like that. Some of my people that I've taken fishing, remarked and stuff like that. So I could just kind of use it as a home page.
For sure.
And it's, probably the easiest way to get in touch with me, that or email it at pierpounder@gmail.com.
Perfect. We appreciate you being on as always, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. I always enjoy talking to you guys. Good luck.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Mr. David.
All right, Butch. Another great report from David Thornton. That guy.
It's a ton of tips right there, man.
You know what I really like what he's talking about with those bellies on those stingrays.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. That's cool.
I like how he just finds a way to use what's there, and he's learned all those little tricks and things. I will say,
he's a vet.
Bacon comes from the belly. And
true.
How many times have we been fishing offshore? I mean, bellies just work. I love bellies for all different types of purposes. My favorite, though, is trolling the belly. Remember how we'll troll those bellies and
Bonita belly, blackfin belly.
Yeah.
Get split down there, but split the bottom of it and where the flaps all nice. Yeah.
Silver flash and a little meat in there and good. You get on a good dolphin bite. That's your saving grace right there.
Game on for sure.
I love it. All right. Well, let's go talk to the sensei, the master. What is he now? He's got to be on some of these rivers. What can we?
I would say the warrior of the winter rivers.
Okay. That's not too bad.
Huh?
What you say there, Captain Bobby? How you been doing?
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I leave it to Thornton to find out a use for a stingray. I can tell you that. I'm just tickled to death that somebody's finally found a use for them things, And ask him when he starts to cut out those bellies right there, has he found any of my hooks in their mouths? Because we don't even mess with them, man.
Well, Bobby,
we just cut it off.
What he told me off the air is that additionally we were talking about catching flounder, and he was saying, for using strips of these stingray bellies can be a good strip bait for his jigs. And off the air, he was telling me another thing you can do is when you clean a flounder, you can actually use that flounder belly as well. Now, I realize that will not be applicable for you because you don't come across a lot of flounder bellies, but you can do the same thing.
Just FYI.
Yeah. In case I were to ever catch a flounder,
right.
Is that what you're saying?
If one were caught, in your vicinity, you could ask them if you could have their belly.
If a flounder could ever be foul hooked, that's the only way I'd catch one. I could use a flounder belly.
Yeah, something like that. But you have to get that flounder jab in on you. I don't know,
man.
I don't know what you're talking about. That's just making conversation. Talk to me about speckled trout and redfish, Bobby. Where you been?
Well, I've been mainly fishing the rivers. Actually, not mainly, just solely fishing the rivers. And, we've had this, obviously had really cold weather a couple nights, but the days warm up so quickly to where, I truly think these fish still think we're in kind of a fall pattern. I mean, we're leaving, or mid to late fall pattern, because we're leaving in the morning with, full cold weather gear on, bibs, beanies, gloves, and everything. And by 9 o'clock in the morning, you're out of them in shirt sleeves and fishing, and so even though it feels so cold to us, in the morning, the water temperatures really just aren't dropping yet. And so what's happening is, we should normally be fishing ledges and river channels right now, being that it's, early December, but I'm still doing a lot of drift fishing the shallow flats of the rivers, out on the flats of the, out away from the river channels on the flats, and even still fishing some outside the mouths of the rivers, So that's kind of been the deal. And I hope I don't sound like I'm complaining, because we've had phenomenal trips. November was just probably one of the better months of fall fishing that I've had in terms of numbers. We didn't break any state records size-wise, but we had just huge numbers days, a number of days through November of triple-digit days, 50 to 100 fish days, fishing all artificial bait, voodoos under popping corks, and some slick lures. There just hadn't quite turned on to that yet, because I think there's still a lot of shrimp around right now, and those fish are still, feeding on the shrimp. There's not a lot of big bird schools, but there's enough shrimp around to where when a few shrimp get on the surface, and a couple gulls dive on, and it really gives away a big school of trout. It's kind of like a Mardi Gras float going along, throwing a little bit of candy and a bunch of people fighting for it. So that's kind of what that's kind of what's going on right now. But, it's still a river deal. They've moved into the rivers. And when I say the rivers, I'm talking about the tidal rivers on both sides of Mobile Bay, Fowl and Dog, Bala Battery, Magnolia Fish, that kind of thing. That's where the fish are right now, trout-wise.
Captain Bobby, I know I've fished with you a couple of times, and I've noticed a couple of different colors. I've been messing around with the 2-inch natural and the 2-inch chartreuse, the white with the chartreuse tail on those voodoos. When do you use which? Is it just kind of a crapshoot about what they want, or are you looking for conditions, water quality? Because like I said, I've been messing around with them some, and I don't know that I can tell a huge difference.
There's not when they're in a big feeding frenzy. You can throw, color really doesn't seem to matter. I've kind of narrowed it down to what Voodoo calls their chartreuse color, but something with it, like you were talking about the pearl with the chartreuse tail, something about having that chartreuse in it, whether the whole body is chartreuse, which is the one I really like, and then the other one I carry is the one you're talking about is the pearl white with the chartreuse tail. Something about that chartreuse really kind of helps them find that bait real well. So, that's what I do. I don't, again, if you get on my boat, I don't have the luxury of, changing lures every time somebody gets a bite on one color. I got to change all 4 colors, So I found one like a solid chartreuse that really seems to work the best. And as the paint as the color even starts to kind of fade out on it a little bit, I carry a little, one of those little chartreuse coloring pens. You can buy them at the bait stores, and I just color them back up, and they just kind of seem to keep catching them, Sure. One of the things I'll tell you about that little voodoo, the one I like, the little baby voodoo, is if you'll super glue that head down, a day before you go fishing. I don't know if this has been happening to you. If you're catching fish on it, it'll start to split and slide down the hook, and the fish just won't eat it. Don't throw those away. You can slide those right back up. Put a little of that gel super glue on them. Put it on the night before and let it harden real good, and you can use those things. I got voodoos right now that I'll use tomorrow on my charter that I know the one that's on my rod's probably got 200 fish on it, and I'm still using it. You know what I'm saying? That's how well they hold up. But you got to glue that head back up, to where it stays up there. Once it starts sliding down, they won't bite it, but don't throw it away because you can just glue it up and it'll still work.
It's a great tip.
Awesome. Man, it is really cool. And those things are super.
Voodoo's going to hate me because they're not going to sell it. Voodoo might hate me because they're up. And I don't want them to hate me or anything like that.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah. But,
no, I don't think so, Bobby. That's a testament to that product. They make a good tough bait, and it's worth what they cost for sure. You're talking about fishing these tidal rivers and this cold weather that we've been having. I know you like to get up and go after them real early. Do you still do that on these cold trips? And do you still take the effort to get on out on the water before that sun comes up?
I do, JoJo, because I think any time of the year, I think trout wise, your best bite's always going to be they're sight feeding fish, and so as soon as they get enough light to be able to feed, they're going to start feeding. So I think it's very important to be there fishing, right at break of day. And if that requires, like today, it took a 30-minute run to where I was going to get to. We were running in the dark, cold to get there, and that's what it requires to do it. That's what I do. But I think it's real important to be not leaving when it's getting daybreak. You want to be fishing when it's breaking day. It doesn't mean that you can't catch fish on up into the morning and well up into the day, but I've always felt like, I want to be fishing at that time because I feel like that's the prime time to catch trout, especially good trout.
Do you find that, on these rivers that as the boat traffic picks up, does that affect the bite?
Absolutely, unequivocally, without a doubt. And it's really magnified this time of year because you get, depending on which river system you're fishing in, and they're all narrow, and but you start to get outboard motors running up and down them, and then of course making wakes, and the wakes breaking on the banks, and then boats being slapped around after they've gotten waked. It absolutely has a huge effect on it, and particularly this time of year. Like during the spring and the summer, when you're fishing the big open water stuff, it's not nearly as bad. You still don't want to be putting a big wake on somebody, even then. But this time of year, it's really important. That's part of the reason I get out there early. But even if you get out there early, and there's plenty of people that know to be out there early, to be courteous out there, because a guy can be catching fish, and you run by him or even idle by him with a big wake, you're going to shut his fish down, and so this time of year it's really important to pay attention to what's going on with that, whether you're the fisherman or the guy that's looking for the fish.
Especially, like you say, in fowl and dog. I mean, I always, and it's probably just coming from the background that I came from, responsible for your wake. I mean, us charter boat guys slow down for everything. It doesn't matter.
Right.
I slow down for everyone in every situation that I can possibly slow down for in the river system. And I mean, I'll even slow down if I see a guy fishing a point. I'll wave at him. Where do you want me to go? You want me to go this way or this? I mean, truthfully, because where are you fishing? Which way is better for me to go? And I'll give him a wide as berth as possible, man. It's just a big deal.
And that's a good point to bring up too, is like a lot of times you can't really tell which way a guy wants to fish.
Yep.
Usually I like to figure a guy, somebody fishing, kind of roughly downwind, but a lot of people don't do it that way. So I do the same thing. That's a good point, is like, sometimes you're not sure which side of, you should be passing a guy on if he's fishing. Then you can indicate to the guys like, hey, which way you want me to idle by you, and even at places like fowl, particularly Magnolian fish on the eastern shore, the same type of rivers are so narrow, man, you can really, really mess somebody up there. Dog, not quite as bad, but you still get a lot of wake action there. But even in the Delta, you start getting up there where you get those big rivers and a lot of open water. My rule of thumb is if I'm running to where I know a guy's going to be able to feel my wake, if I'm running close enough where I know he's going to feel my wake, I just slow down. Even in a big river, back. If I'm running up just bring it all the way back. If I know I'm running close enough to where he's going to can feel my wake, I'm going to slow down. Big wide open river like the Spanish or the Tensar or something like that. If I know he's going to feel my wake, if I have to run, to get around a point or avoid a bar or whatever it is, I slow down enough to where he's to idle, to where he's not going to feel my wake. And that's a good rule of thumb. I guess that's my rule of thumb anyway. I don't know if it's a good one, but that's the one.
How much time is it going to waste for you?
None.
30 seconds?
None. Not to amount to anything. Usually there's something you can do too while you're making that little,
that's right.
Making that little
re-rig something or,
Yeah. Pull your beanie back down a little bit.
That's right.
Yeah. Bobby, you're talking about your wake, and it's definitely important to think about how your wake is affecting another boater, another angler. But you also mentioned that wake splashing up on shore, and that's another thing too. In these rivers, a lot of times you're fishing these points, you're fishing these drop-offs where you've got a deep part of the river, and those fish are coming up into the shallow areas to feed. When you're fishing these types of places, how do...
Gotta be quiet.
Well, aside from being quiet, we've talked about that. Butch's got his moccasins special for this time of year, but how do you approach a point? And so what I mean by that is, one of the things I've noticed growing up on Fowl River, there's a specific way to fish some points that, like, it's one of those deals where if you see the guy doing one thing, you can just pretty much sit back and wait and be like, okay, as soon as he leaves that point, we're going to go over there.
I'm going to fish it right. Yeah.
Fish it the right way, and we're going to catch the fish. So, what do you do, especially if it's maybe your first time on a river? You don't know where the drop-offs are. How do you do it?
Well, the big thing is, and I think this is what you guys were talking about fishing it right, is like when I'm deciding on where I'm going to go or what I'm going to do, instead of running up to it, that we were just talking about making wakes and spooking fish and that sort of thing, and being, you could do the same thing with your boat. So if you run right up to the little point or whatever, to the drop off you're planning on fishing, run up wide open, shut down and start fishing, you better plan on waiting for at least 20 minutes, because nothing's going to happen. Those fish are going to fall off of that point or that drop off down into the deep water where they live. And it's going to take a while for them to come back. And that's what happens when a boat runs by you when you're catching those fish on those ledges and points, which is what happens during the winter. So what I do when I decide on what I'm going to do or where I'm planning on fishing, I'm shutting down 100 yards before I even get there. I'm just shutting down the boat as slow as the idle can go. And then even then, especially if I don't have to deal with a lot of wind, I'll drop the trolling motor way before I'm planning on starting to fish, because right. I don't want to go roaring right in there. Even if those fish were there and I know they were there, and I go in there and make a bunch of noise throwing up a big wake, they're going to go down to their little hiding place and wait for a while before they start feeding again. And I'm going to get impatient. I'm going to leave, and I've never known there was any fish there. So the big thing is just to go in there quiet, just as quiet as you possibly can. If the wind can help me, I'll get like upwind from it, just shut the motor down, drop the trolling motor, and let the wind just blow me in there. And what does it hurt to make a few more casts, get kind of warmed up? I even tell the charters this sometimes. I'm going like, guys, we're going to be a few minutes before we catch fish. I want to get y'all to get warmed up. I want to make sure how they're casting, make sure they're not hitting me in the head with corks and lures and that sort of thing before we get to where I'm planning on fishing, So I kind of got to let everybody get warmed up and make their cast and that sort of thing. So, but the short answer to the question is, the place you're planning on fishing, get into it quiet. If you get into it quiet, you'll find out real quick if there's fish there. And then you don't have to spend a whole lot of time fishing there. If you don't get bit, getting in there quiet, then you can move on to the next place.
Yeah, that's funny. You talk about the mock casts almost. We talk about all the time on the offshore trips. You don't want to go to the honey hole and drop down straight to, 30-pound snappers right off the bat. You got to warm up a little bit. You got to ease into it. You got to make sure everything's lined up.
I like to see how everybody can cast before I get to where I'm really, wanting to fish.
Thing.
And I like to and you don't want to catch a fish on your first cast anyway. You know what I'm saying?
That's
so
right.
I like to make a few kind of warm-up casts anyway. You know what happens, guys. You guys drop down and catch this giant fish on your first cast. You go, oh, God, we might as well go home now.
I'm done. Yeah, we're done.
Yeah, we're done,
Well, and if you get, it's like, Bobby, if we both go up in there in the strike zone, if you cast out there and have a backlash, and if I cast out there and have a professional overrun, then you don't want to be doing that when you're just right on top of them. So you want that to happen.
That's exactly right. And this time of year too, when your hands are cold and everything else too, man, you want to get yourself a little bit warmed up and find out what all is going to be happening. Get the ice off the rods and that sort of thing.
Well, it's funny you talk about ice on the rods, because that is something. Well, weather around here really is changing, and it'll change a lot in a day. And that really brings us to this week's Hey Cap question and this week's Hey Cap sponsor. Butch, I love getting questions from like this one we got coming up, and we get to bring this to these guys that are specialists and ask them what they think. But just like we go straight to the professionals to shorten the learning curve, you need to check out the guys over at Daycool Heating and Air, because they are the home performance specialists. What does that mean? That means they will inspect your property and find leaking air ducts, hoses, clean out any ductwork, and find any of the HVAC problems before they become nightmares. So check out the heating and cooling specialists who bring you the inshore, offshore, and onshore specialists each week, and mention this ad for a free home performance diagnostic. Contact them at 251-633-5121, online at daycoolair.com, or on the Daycool Heating and Air mobile app. They are license number AL07028. All right, Butch, who's getting the slick lure this week?
This week's Hey Cat was brought to us by Chris Holland. He commented on our Facebook post that I made a few weeks ago. He's going to get some slick lure goodies from Pure Flats. Chris Holland asked, "Hey Cap, do you prefer a medium to light rod for trout, or do you tend to lean towards medium to medium heavy in a rod with a fast or extra fast tip?" And I like this question because I know Cat and Bobby's a rod junkie, so I think we can kind of bounce off of this into several different areas.
And let me ask you this. If I answer the question, do I get some slick lures too?
Hey, you got to ask Joey about that. I have to leave that to Captain Landreneau.
We'll do that. Well, actually, I use, he hit the nail on the head. I use, the rods that I use all have a fast. I don't really care for extra fast. That's a little bit too soft. But I like the rod. All of my rods have a fast tip, which, if you're not a rod, like Butch just said, a rod junkie like I am, which I am. Basically, that just means that the rod tip is soft. The last quarter to third of the rod, depending on how much of it is soft. It's just fast. That's all that means. And then when he talks about heavy or medium heavy, it just depends. It talks about how much the rod's going to bend down towards the reel. So to me, I don't like heavy. When I see heavy, I like more like medium fast, maybe medium heavy fast at the most. But the fast tip is the important part, because what that is that's your shock absorber. It lets you cast a little bit further, but the most important thing is when you get that fish on is that little soft tip. When that big trout shaking his head, they shake their head so fast, they're really trying to jerk that hook can get pulled out of there so easily. And this time of year, I'm using fluorocarbon line on the casting rods and braid on the spinning rods. And so neither of those have a lot of stretch. So that fast tip actually kind of acts as your shock absorber. So just basically lets that trout shake his head without, if you had a broomstick, like a very stiff rod on there with no stretch on the line, it's just going to pull that hook right out of there, so that's the reason I like the fast tip on the rod. As far as like medium, heavy or medium, I don't worry too much about that with trout. Sometimes I go to medium heavy when I'm fishing, redfish, particularly tournament redfish, because what that does when you start to bend that rod, when you get that fish on, the heavy part of the rod really loads up real well and keeps that fish on. Don't worry too much about that with trout. Trout are not really great fighters. You know what I'm saying? Even big trout don't really fight. They make a couple slashing runs and they're coming in. But redfish, on the other hand, you want to get them up, coming to the boat, especially tournament-wise, coming up to the boat. And that's what that heavier action of that rod does for you. But again, the main thing is the fast tip. And all of my rods are 7 foot. The shortest rods I use are 7 foot. I use 7.2s and 7.3s when I'm throwing the slick lure or the top water. And then my popping cork rods are 7.6s. And the reason I would go to that big long rod with the popping cork is at that point, I'm not worried about feeling a bite. With a popping cork rod, obviously it's a visual strike. So you can see that what happens when you go, the longer the rod, the less feel you're going to have. So you put that 7.6 on there, I get the casting distance. And I just get to watch the cork go down. I have to worry about feeling the bite. So I want the extra casting distance. And that's the reason I go to 7.6. But I don't use anything shorter than 7 foot. Is that TFI too much information?
No, it's not. I'm trying to soak it in. I'm trying to soak it in.
That's what happens when you ask. That's what happens when you ask a rod junkie about rods.
Butch, all you need to say is, "All right, that's going to wrap it up this week."
Right. That's right.
There's nothing else to say.
Get the hook.
I'm not letting them get out of here with that little information. We need some more. So whenever you're working a grub or a slick lure, what's your go-to on that? Would you rather be heavier or lighter, I guess is what I'm trying to ask, whenever you're trying to set the hook on a grub or a slick lure or something like that?
The good thing about
and top water too.
Well, same deal there. The only thing I might do if I have if I'm specifically grub fishing, I'm not worried too much about casting distance. I'm doing more like vertical fishing there. Mm-hmm. I'm just wanting that bait to get down there. So what I might do, and again, this is because I got about probably 200 rods, but I have rods that I have just for grub fishing, and I might get away from that fast tip on those and go just to a true medium action rod, which has basically it's just a kind of a more along the line, closer to what you call like a broomstick, not a true broomstick, but a true rod where there's no give in the tip.
Stiff blank.
And the reason I do that is just because I'm such a rotten jig fisherman. I have to have every advantage I can feeling that bite, because down there you're really counting on feeling that bite and being able to set that hook. And you might be down 15, 20, 25 feet. Like say if you're fishing the Mobile River, the Industrial Canal, you might be down 20 or 25 feet. You've got a lot of distance between you and that jig, and you've got to get the hook set on the fish. So I want that a little bit more feel on the tip of that rod, and in that case, and maybe a grub rod, I might have just a 7 foot medium action rod without the fast tip. When I go to a slick or a top water, that's when I want that a little bit faster tip. When that fish is coming in a little bit shallow and shaking up on the top of the surface and that sort of thing, I want that faster tip for that. And then you're giving up a little bit of feel there. So the softer the tip, the less feel you're going to have. The stiffer the tip, the more feel you're going to have. That's just, that's kind of the short of it.
Well, Bobby, I've been fishing with you as well. If folks want to come out and take a look at your 200 or so rods that you bring on every trip.
That's what y'all have been with me. They're like, y'all duck out there. I got some. Hey, wait a minute. We're going grub fishing now. Let me get the rods out of the rod locker now. Put the pop cork rods up. Yeah.
Yeah, most people don't realize that there's a 30-minute preliminary briefing before every fishing trip where you go through all your rods and explain what they're used for and how they use them. No, but
wait a minute. 30. Maybe 15 minutes.
Yeah,
okay. 30 minutes is a bit of a.
That's a stretch, yeah. But no, in all seriousness, do you have any dates available in December for folks?
I do. I got some left in December, and I'll tell you, if we don't get a lot of rain, we might have a good mid to late winter too. You know, if we don't get a lot of rain, I really think we're about a month behind right now. And this late December into January and February could even be good. You know, if we just don't get a lot of rain, talking about these river systems, that's the killer in these rivers is local and upstate rain. When you get a lot of that, which we do tend to get during the winter, it can screw them up. But if we don't, man, that could be good. But yeah, I got dates through the end of the year. I got some dates open.
Excellent. Just give you a call. What's the number again?
You can go to our phone number is 251-661-7696, and then the website is ateamfishing.com, like the old Mr. T show, ateamfishing.com.
All right, Captain Bobby. Always enjoy talking to you. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us. I know I appreciate it. Butch appreciates it, and everybody listening.
Great answer.
Definitely enjoys it. So thanks, man. We'll talk to you again
guys.
soon.
Well, sounds good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Captain Bobby. Keep whacking them.
All right, Butch. That's a great inshore report. Let's round this thing out and head offshore. Where are we going?
Ready. Let's head on down and see what Angelo DePaola, the Coastal Connection's up to. What'd you say, Angelo?
Oh, man, what's happening, guys? I'll tell you what's happening. It's like December, and you can wear a T-shirt outside still. Yep. It's almost October, November kind of weather, which has affected, I'm sure, the inshore fish, but definitely the offshore fishing has been as good as I've seen it in a really long time.
You guys had a great trip last week, eh?
We went, I don't know, it depends on how you call it, 2 for 4 on Blue Marlin. We lost 2 next to the boat. We caught 2. I think we had 2 other fish that seemed like Blue Marlin that we missed, and caught 3 big tunas. I mean, basically, we just, for one day straight, we just pretty much fought fish the whole time. It was awesome.
Sounds like a terrible trip. You guys catching those fish live baiting or trolling, or?
We caught the blues and the tunas. We caught live bait, and we actually caught a 25-pound dolphin bait trying to catch bait. And nice. We had another probably 20-pound dolphin that we caught on the troll. And we caught some smaller yellowfins at night, chunking some like 40-pound fish.
So it sounds like there are some other fish. Yeah, you had an answer for everything.
Take your pick. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I mean, everything we tried worked.
Angelo, we've talked a lot on here, Butch and I both, about our naivete when it comes to live bait fishing in blue water, big live bait fishing I'm talking about specifically. When you guys get out there and you're catching bait, what do you do to keep from stressing out those black fins? I mean, what's your strategy when catching bait? What kind of tackle do you use, and how do you get them in the boat to keep them from getting eaten, number one, but also tiring them out?
Well, I'll tell you, like, to me, the best way to catch bait when you can catch them this way is we actually troll these little, like, just dusters over a J hook, and we bend the barb down. Mm-hmm. And we'll put 2 up on the top and 2 on planers, and it'll be like 4 of these on a rod, and we'll fish them on 50s and 80s. So you can reel the fish in really quick to keep the stress. But what's bigger issue almost always with the bait is not so much the stress, is them becoming prey to sharks and barracudas. And so the natural, what you almost want to do is when you hook one is kind of keep on going for maybe a few more seconds to kind of see if you can't hook a couple more, which isn't a bad strategy. But for us, we go quickly into reverse when we're trying to troll them up like that, so we can get back on top of them, keep them from getting stressed, and more so to keep them from getting eaten. I'd say this past trip, about half our baits were getting eaten. Now, at night, we're catching them on the jigs, and I like a nice, stiff, lightweight jigging rod. I like to pair it with a nice, light Shimano reel. We were using Talica 10s and 12s. So you can put them in that low gear. And we were lucky that you didn't have to drop the jig down 20 feet. You hooked a fish, so it was real easy to get them in. And these were smaller baits than normal.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you're on a bigger boat and you can't just sling them over the rail, is to get a net that has the rubber lining, because you don't wipe off as much slime when you net them with that net. And then when we're rigging them up, we'll quite often put on like a rubber Grunion's bib, so you're not putting them on your shirt. Kind of keeps you from getting dirty. Plus, it keeps the bait in better shape.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to really get down to it, you can get some rubber gloves. You don't really have to. I mean, is quick if you can get the bait bridled up real quickly. And we use the little Diamond product darts. What you want to do with those is take a little hook file or a Dremel tool and sharpen the point on them a little bit, and they just go like a hot knife through butter, right on through, and that really helps the bait out. And you know, when you don't do that, it's hard to push through. Their eyeballs are bulging out of their head as you're trying to push that thing through the roof of their mouth. So that's always a nice little tip to quickly get that bait in the water with as little stress as possible.
Angelo, I never thought I'd hear anybody say they were having to back down on bait, but that's a good tip though. Yeah, it's not something that I would ever think to do if somebody hadn't told me, but it's smart. I mean, your whole goal is to get them in lively, keep them lively. Now, the marlin bite's been out of control. Sounds like the tuna bite has been just as good, especially catching that many fish on live bait. Are y'all still finding all these fish on the submersibles, semi-submersibles, and floaters, and mostly a structure bite? Or have you been able to fish some current, some upwelling, any rips out there?
We didn't see any of that out, any rips or anything. For us and everybody I've talked to, it's all been submersibles. I'll tell you, Proteus has had a lot of fish. We caught most of our fish on Appomattox. What I found interesting on this trip was we started off at the marlin rig, and the water temperature was over there was 2 degrees less than what it was at Appomattox. But when we got out there, we started bait fishing. We were catching baits 4 at a time. There's small blackfins everywhere, and these giant flying fish, lots of them. And tunas anywhere from 100 to 150 pounds were crashing in them. You could see these big bull dolphins crashing in them. So we were like, well, let's go ahead and put some baits out here. And we
I got a genius idea.
This looks fruitful.
Yeah, you don't have to be too smart to be like, hey, this seems like a pretty good spot.
Right.
And we caught a nice yellowfin right off the bat. And then we kind of got in that last 30 minutes of darkness. I don't know what it is. I've just never had a whole lot of luck right at that last little bit of daylight. And the kind of, you could see the bait kind of what the fish weren't busting as much. We caught that one fish there. We fished about 30 more minutes, caught a dolphin, and that was it. And so we left that because when we also looked at the chart, we were like, all the reports where there's been a lot of fish on Appomattox. Out of everybody that's gone in that rig in the past 4 weeks has caught a bunch of fish. So we went out there and there was just little black fins everywhere, like pound and a half size baits, and filled the tubes, came back, started fishing that morning. I don't think we went 30 minutes without a bite all day.
That's awesome.
So, and it was not much to it. Like I said, we were darting them, putting them out. And I think we had a double blue marlin tuna at one point. It's as good a fishing as it gets in the Gulf of Mexico. And I doubt there's anywhere in the world that is getting as good a bite as what we're getting right now.
Man,
that's awesome.
That is awesome to hear. I know we want to get a tip from you to, kind of key in on something. I know you had to have learned something when you're getting that many opportunities at billfish. It makes a lot of guys, it takes them a whole year to get that many shots at that many billfish.
Sure.
With this happening in a weekend, you spent a lot of time down there at the Orange Beach Marina. You hearing any other good reports from other boats?
Well, I know Buggy Washer, they'd gone 1 for 5 and caught a big tuna, and they went back out. And at the same time we went out, and they ended up going 6 for 8 on blue marlin. And I think they had 5 big tunas they kept. They had, 4 big yellowfins, a 206-pound big eye. And I think they released 5 more big tunas. And for what I heard, they caught all their fish trolling.
Wow.
So they're thick. It doesn't seem to matter much of what you do.
Need to get out there.
Fighting.
That's awesome. All right. Well, that's going.
It's going to be good weather tomorrow and part of Friday. So if you can get off work, I recommend going.
Yeah. Sounds like it. Sick day time. All right, buddy. Well, let's get that offshore tip from you. This week's brought to us by Fishbites. Are you tired of scrambling for bait whenever you decide to go fishing? Have an artificial bait that's better than live bait, ready to go at a moment's notice with Fishbites. It's easy to pack and travel with, and shelf stable, and not to mention tough. With Fishbites, the bait stays on the hook and the fish stay on the bait. Check out the full line of scented saltwater and freshwater baits and tackle at fishbites.com. All right, Angelo, what did you learn out there, buddy?
All right, so was lucky. I mean, we were on the boat, and there's a bunch of boat captains fishing with us, and one of them was this guy, Bo Keogh. And so Bo wanted to rig all the baits up. And he had a couple of things that I liked that he did. He used, usually with us, we tie a swivel, but he was using a really small barrel swivel that you could reel through the guide. And so you really didn't need to wire the fish, which I really liked. I think, you just crimp it on. It's a great connection. It's stronger than a knot because we're usually tying. And the other thing that he was doing that I really liked is we knew we were going to be fishing slightly smaller baits, so we went down to a 14-0 circle hook. I think with a 14-0 circle hook, when you're fishing big fish, is the gap isn't that big. So he was taking a pair of crimpers and kind of, you've got the little slot there where the crimp would go in. He'd put the hook there, and he'd kind of up towards the barb of the hook, and he'd take pliers near the eye of the hook, and he'd just open it up just a little bit to give it a little bit more gap. And I really like that. And the thing that we started doing this summer, we're always trying to figure out a better way to attach the bait to the hook. And so we found when we're fishing 4 to 7 pound baits, that 20 pound mono worked really good. It didn't break on the bait, but it would break once the bait got eaten. But we were fishing really small baits this go around on 220 pound leader. I actually think we could have gone to 150, and we went down to 10 pound test mono because the baits were just that much smaller. They'd stay on there, and then when they got eaten, you didn't have to worry about your bait kind of acting as a lever, dehooking the fish as it jumped. So that's kind of my tip of the week. Scale down, just like anything, any kind of fishing. Match your terminal tackle to your bait, and I think opening up that hook a little bit, especially on these fish, is going to make a big difference in your hookup ratio.
Mind the gap. Mind the gap for sure.
Gap is very important.
So, Angelo,
always
tell me, son, you got anything new coming on market this week in the waterfront and boating property world?
Man, I tell you, I think we have the best listing in Orange Beach right now if you're a boater. There's a little point just a little south of Orange Beach Marina on a road called Jubilee Point Road. And we have the house directly on that point, kind of facing towards the pass to get a nice southerly breeze. We have it listed. It's barely a 2-year-old house, built fortified gold to withstand everything Mother Nature has to throw at her. It's a little over 4,000 square feet. E-Pay dock, some of the best views in Orange Beach, and a straight shot right out the pass. Got it listed at 2.1. It's a very unique property, and like I said, I just think it's probably the best listing in Orange Beach right now.
If folks want to check it out, what's the best place for them to go?
Look, go to my Facebook page. We got an awesome video. Just go to Facebook, go to The Coastal Connection. You'll find me on there. Scroll down a little bit, and you'll see we had a really nice professional video done of the house.
I'm excited about those tacos you shared last night. I shared that. Those tacos are amazing.
Those tacos, a restaurant should pick up that recipe. Those are the best fish tacos I've ever eaten.
I can't wait to try them for sure. We appreciate the report.
All right, man. You guys have a good one. Later.
Man, Butch, I really did not think first week of December that we'd be talking about.
Well, we are not struggling. We are not struggling for reports and content, which is a blessing.
Yeah.
I mean, really, we haven't checked up. Like you say, it's first week of December. I mean, we have not checked up. We have not been. Offshore was a little skimpy there for a little while with the weather and all, but man, we have not. Fishing's hot, and really, it hasn't slowed down. If you want to do anything, inshore, onshore, offshore, it's been on.
Man, a 206-pound tuna is a big old tuna. That's almost as big as you.
That is much more than I weigh. Thank you. But yes, that's a big tuna.
It is. It's a nice one. Those big guys are cool too. It seems just like you get those in at a certain time of year, and
usually seems cold. Usually when it starts getting chilly and the water temperature starts to drop a little bit, you start seeing a couple of those big guys in the Gulf.
Yeah, I'd love to know more about it. Why we seem to catch those bluefins in the spring? They seem to show back up, but why not in the fall? Or maybe they're there and just not that many people fishing and we're not catching them. But I highly doubt that. I think you'd have heard about one at some point.
Yeah, I don't know. They just come through at different times, I reckon, doing their migratory things.
That's where those tagging projects are so cool. I can't wait to find out what the cobia tagging deal is, because it's a mystery. Yeah, but you get to learn. Yeah. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing about that for sure. But man, it was a great show. What'd you learn? Man,
that was a ton. I took away a ton of wisdom from this show, honestly.
Yeah,
I thought that David's stingray belly trick for your tipping your jigs was a really cool thing, and I really like talking to Captain Bobby about the rod action and what he prefers for what aspect or for what application. The more that I fish, the more that I use a slick lure, the more that I use the grubs and the popping cork. I'm not afraid to admit, man, just more questions come to my mind, and I want to find out more about what these guys do to be more productive.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I think it's okay to admit it. I don't think people are under any illusion that you're really even an average fisherman, really.
That's okay. I'm okay with that, man. I'm learning. I hope I'm learning with everybody.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like it that way. What'd you learn, man?
I learned something I learned a long time ago, but it was a reminder, and it I think it's such a good pearl of wisdom that it needs to be repeated. We'll probably do it again at some point. I just love that tip David gave about focusing on the strike zone for flounder. It's funny, it's comical when you sit back and look at it, but like if a guy's fishing from the bank or from the beach, you've seen it, you're in your boat, you're trying to cast up to the bank. The guy on the bank's fishing, he's casting out towards you, and you're both trying to fish the same piece of water perpendicular to where the fish are. And those fish are laying in that trough, they're on that ledge or that drop off or whatever that feature is, and they're orienting parallel to the shoreline. They're not orienting perpendicular to the
straight
shoreline.
Out.
So if you're making casts, perpendicular, you got to make a lot of casts to effectively cover ground.
Sure, and those fish aren't running this way. They're not running offshore to inshore. They're running the beach.
Exactly. So what David was saying, I just want to key back in on that because I think it's very important to think about, is that you're on the beach, you need to be fan casting parallel to the beach, and you're actually covering way more of the strike zone in a way shorter period of time. You think about it, if there's a flounder, how far will a flounder move if you drag a bait past him? I don't know, 3 to 5 feet maybe or something. Yeah. So that would mean for you to fish that little drop off, you'd have to cast and then either cast from that position.
Sure.
In 5 foot increments.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess you could walk down the beach a little further. And what David's doing is getting on out there, fan casting that area. And so as far as you can cast, you can make about 3 casts and then move on down just to where you
cover a lot more ground that way.
Oh man. We talk about how many times have the guys on here talked about how many more fish you catch from being able to throw the bait 10% further.
Well, you got to be in the strike zone.
You're in the strike zone and you're covering ground. We've heard that from inshore, offshore, and onshore guys. And just, the sheer amount of ground you could cover by taking that one tip to the beach will vastly improve your catches.
Agreed.
Tomorrow.
Yep.
I love it.
I agree, man. Me too. Great show.
Yeah. Wrap it up.
It's going to wrap it up, folks. Please subscribe, rate, and review. We're definitely seeing some uptick in the reviews on iTunes. We really appreciate that. It takes you guys about 30 seconds to get on iTunes and scroll down and give us a review, a rate. Wherever you listen to podcasts, if you'd like us to email the podcast each week, head over to greatdaysoutdoors.com/ASFR, and we'll email you the new show each week. Thanks for that Hey Cap question. That was a cool one. Make sure you send us an email, and we'll send your stuff to Mr. Joey Landreneau, getting your slick lure goodies. We appreciate it. You guys keep whacking them. This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report is brought to you by Foster Contracting, Fortified Roofing Pros. Did you know you could save up to 40% on your homeowner's insurance with a fortified roof? Learn more at fortifiedroofingpros.com or call them at 251-973-9999.
And also KillerDock. Are you suffering from dock dysfunction? Check out a full line of dock enhancement at KillerDock.com. That's KillerDock.com. This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report was brought to you by me, Joe Baya, and National Land Realty. If I can help you in any way with the purchase or sale of land in Alabama or Florida, whether it's timberland, farmland, recreational land like hunting land, or even agricultural land or ranch land like horse farm, drop me a message at jbaya@nationalland.com. That's JBAYA at nationalland.com. And also A-Team Fishing Adventures. Check them out online at www.ateamfishing.com or contact them at 251-661-7696. And also Pier Pounder. Check them out at pierpounder.com. And also Fishbites. The bait stays on the hook and the fish stay on the bait. Check out the full line of Fishbite lures at fishbites.com.